Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SC Biz News live stream event on the CRDA's Regional Economic Scorecard and Recovery Preparedness. My name is Terry Griffiths, and I'm a reporter with the Charleston Regional Business Journal, which SC Biz News publishes, along with Columbia Regional Business Report, GSA Business Report, and SC Biz Magazine. We are so happy that you joined us today as we use technology to keep you safely informed with expert advice and insight from the region's business communities and economic development leaders. Events like these are only possible with support from our business partners, and we're going to hear from some of those companies right now. If you are in need of a product or service, we ask that you please consider these companies. They understand business and will be great allies for your companies just as they have been for ours. We'll be right back to start the discussion, so don't go away.
You know, until about 3 months ago, for my entire life, I had been under the impression that 2020 meant clarity of vision. In fact, it meant perfect vision every time I went to the eye doctor, but my experience perhaps has been a bit like yours, and 2020 has been anything but clear vision. You know, I read recently that we started the year 2020 like 1974 with an impeachment. We then quickly morphed into what looked like 1918 with a global pandemic. Not long after, we found ourselves in 1929 as the economy began to go south. And then just a few weeks ago, we found ourselves in what certainly seems to be, even today, like 1968, with a country filled with social and civil unrest. I don't know about you, but what the last few months have demonstrated to me is that there's a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do in the country, a lot of work to do in our region. And what I know is that we can't get the work done until we get back to work. And so Charleston Southern University stands with all of you as we think through how we can be one region ready. We're ready, and I know you are too. In our case, it's getting students back on campus so that we can prepare servant leaders to pursue significant lives. Join us at Charleston Southern University as we do exactly that. God bless you.
Hi, my name is Armin Asadi. I'm a managing partner with the Verizon Business Group. I lead an organization that works with small and medium businesses across the Carolinas. Specifically, our coastal South Carolina team has been working with business clients throughout the pandemic on assisting them with collaboration tools, increasing the communication effectiveness as people work remotely, helping them with potentially contactless transactions for their employees and for their customers to make it a safer environment, all under the goal of helping to lean operational costs wherever available to ultimately help you business owners and business drivers on growing revenues. If you'd like to learn more about any of the products and services and how Verizon can partner with you, please use the chat field. We appreciate the partnership and we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
All right, thank you, Terry, and thank you to all of our sponsors who have been great partners with getting business news and information out to you. We're very honored to have you here today in our audience for our presentation and panel discussion on what I'm calling the Regional Economic Reset, which is something I'm hoping we're going to see before today's over. We plan to have Jacki Renegar, Director of Research and Business Intelligence for the Charleston Regional Development Alliance, in our studio giving us a presentation, but as the chaos of this year continues, she's not able to be with us, and so we had her come into the studio yesterday and do her presentation. So she won't be live, but we will. We're going to give her presentation, and then we're going to come back and have a live panel discussion with some business executives and leaders from the Charleston region, with the scorecard being the backdrop for that discussion. So take it away, virtual Jacki, and we'll be right back.
Thank you, Andy. So this year's Regional Economic Scorecard makes the 11th year that we've worked on this project in collaboration with the Metro Chamber, the Charleston Regional Development Alliance, and the Business Journal. And in this year, we have compared ourselves to 8 other U.S. metros, and we chose those metros based on the economic assets that those communities have and the similarity to those in the Charleston area. We compare back to a baseline year of 2005, and this year's report includes data through 2019. It is a regional economic scorecard, but we know that a region's economy can only be successful if not only the right economic factors are in place, but also if the health and well-being of the residents and the workers and the quality of life of that place are also right. So we include indicators in those types of categories as well. So the overall takeaway from this year's report is that our region's economy is better, stronger, and more prosperous than in 2005. We have an increased standard of living and workforce productivity as measured by our gross regional product and GRP per capita. We have increased entrepreneurship, increased connectivity on the global stage. Our median household income in the region was over $70,500 and surpassed the U.S.'s median household income for the first time since we've been measuring this data. Our poverty rate had the largest improvement among all the peer metros in our report, dropping 3.5 points from 14.2% in 2005 to the 10.7% in 2019. And that compares to the U.S., which was 13.3% in 2005, dropping to 12.3% in 2019. The Charleston region had the lowest unemployment rate of all of our peer metros in this report, at 2.4% in 2019. Even our housing affordability began to improve in 2019 compared to 2018, not because costs were decreasing, but because incomes were such that fewer households were paying greater than 30% of their incomes on housing costs. With the new income milestone that we discovered for the Charleston region in this year's report, we decided to take a deeper dive and found some new data from the Trident United Way, the self-sufficiency standard. This data was prepared for United Ways across the country, but this particular data is shown for the Charleston area. And on the left side of the screen, you see data for a single adult or a worker in Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester counties, the salary that needs to be earned in order to be self-sufficient. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see the annual household income required to be considered self-sufficient in our local economy. Luckily, our median wage in the Charleston area and our annual household income are significantly above these self-sufficiency levels, so that on the whole, people in our region are able to afford to be self-sufficient. However, we did find that 47,500 households in our region, or 16% of total households, are not earning enough to be considered self-sufficient. So that's one population we want to pay attention to in our region as we move forward towards increased prosperity. We want to be as inclusive as possible in providing resources to those folks so they can upskill or access resources that will help them increase their earning power, so that as we move forward, our entire economy can become more prosperous. We also noticed some positive changes in workforce diversity. We looked at data over the past 5 years and found that not only did our region experience increased labor force participation by people of color, notice 31% of our workforce in 2019 are people of color compared to 28% in 2014, but also we noticed in 2 of the higher paying occupations in our region. Notice those indicated in green, management occupations and IT occupations. We showed significant increased diversity in those occupation categories. However, we still noticed some decreased or declining diversity in a couple of high-paying occupations, in particular engineering and legal, so still some improvement that can be made, but some progress was made in workforce diversity overall. It's just something employers should stay focused on as we move forward, because we know the more inclusive our economy is, the higher likelihood for increased prosperity for all. So overall, through 2019, we were experiencing some significant improvements in our economy in the Charleston region. Then along came 2020 and COVID-19. This data shows consumer spending patterns at the beginning of 2020 from January through October 25th. You can see that in mid-March and April, consumer spending contracted as much as 30% in the Charleston region. Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester residents or spending less money as the peak part of the impact of COVID-19 occurred. Consumer spending is important to track because it is 70% of the gross regional product locally, just like it's about 70% of the national GDP. Therefore, it's a good indicator of how the economy is going to move overall. So notice by the week ending October 25th, spending patterns by consumers in all three of our counties had moved towards more normal patterns. We see that Charleston and Dorchester had already moved into positive territory, and Berkeley was almost there, and statewide spending was also up about 3%. By year end, by December 31st, this is what we want to see. We want to see the positive trend in consumer spending so that we know recovery is on the way. Also, looking at COVID's impact on employment by sector, we know that varying sectors were impacted differently. You can see that by August, compared back to February, almost all employment sectors had nearly recovered or had recovered almost all of the jobs lost since COVID hit in arguably March or April was the highest impact. But the exception would be leisure and hospitality. Certainly by August, leisure and hospitality jobs were still 33% down from where they were at pre-COVID levels. And even in September, leisure and hospitality was still down 27%, and half of all the other sectors had moved into positive territory or were within 1 point or so from being fully recovered. We know leisure and hospitality will come back. Remember, the Charleston area is still a #1 travel destination in the world and in the U.S. by numerous sources, and so it will take probably a wide availability of a vaccine before the jobs start to really come back at a fast pace. However, it will happen, but until then, leisure and hospitality will probably lag in terms of job recovery. Let's take a look now at job openings or online job postings, another indicator of the future of the economy and employers' outlook. If employers feel that the economy is recovering, they're in hiring mode and therefore are adding job openings. So you can see that by August, Charleston metro area's job openings were already 5% greater than pre-COVID levels. So even though job openings slowed or even contracted during the COVID's heaviest impact, by August we were already back to pre-COVID hiring levels, much more so than several of the peer metros in our report and several other metros across the U.S. So that's a positive indicator that future growth and recovery is on the way. Looking into the future, we expect that growth will continue in the Charleston region economy. More than 28,000 new jobs will be added over the next 5 years by 2024. And ironically, notice that hospitality is still leading the way with more than 4,000 new jobs over the next 5 years. Many of those jobs, as I mentioned before, might come on the latter end of that 5-year period, and other jobs in the categories you see there, such as medical and life sciences, logistics, and information technology, those that have done well during COVID are poised to probably increase jobs more on the front end of this next 5-year period, as you see there in the list of jobs that we'll see grow going forward. So lastly, I wanted to point out some national trends that we've seen occur during COVID that we think are also rising to the surface locally. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and other surveys nationwide have shown that women in the last few months have actually been leaving the labor force, particularly in the months when school has begun to start back. However, so many students are unable to attend school in person, and women, being the primary caregivers still in most households and families, have often chosen to leave the workforce in order to maintain that child care responsibility and also monitor the students and their online schooling. Another trend that we've seen has been remote work, people working from home. A majority of companies nationwide and also locally here in the Charleston area have reported that a larger share than usual of their workforce are working from home where possible. We think that will be a continuing trend going forward. And related to that, the third data point that you see on the screen there, migration patterns. For for those folks who can work from anywhere. Many folks in those more largely densely populated metro areas across the nation, I'm thinking in particular New York City and Chicago, we've seen a lot of evidence of migrating residents from those metro areas to more mid-sized markets like the Charleston metro area, places where people feel like, or in reality can experience more social distancing, more space, the ability to spread out a little bit, and in many cases, more affordability than in those larger, more densely populated metros. So migration patterns from larger metros will really be a benefit to the Charleston region in terms of the talent that we will attract and the workforce that local employers can then take advantage of as they continue to recover from COVID-19 and the economy continues to improve. So if you'd like to see more of the data or get more details from the Regional Economic Scorecard, the report will be available on both the Charleston Regional Development Alliance's website as well as the Charleston Metro Chambers.
All right, Jacki, thank you. Thank you for that comprehensive look at the data. And now I'm very honored to introduce our panel today. They're from the business community, the education sector, startup and technology. And if you've been to our Power Breakfast events in person, you know that the reason that they're special is you get to ask questions, you get to interact. Now, you can't be here today, but you can interact in a similar fashion. So there are two ways to get questions to us in the studio here. One is to put your question in the YouTube chat window. We have someone who's going to be monitoring that, a producer, and they'll send us the questions. The other way is to just chat among yourselves. It's something that you can't really do during a live event easily. So we found that that's been also a good way. So to start off, from Boomtown, we're joined by Julie Edwards, who's the Vice President of Client Success. Thanks for joining us, Julie.
Thanks for having me.
From Ernst & Young, we're joined by Shawn Saulsberry. He's the Manager of Strategic Transformation and the lead for EY in the Charleston area.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. And last, we have from the College of Charleston, Godfrey Gibbison, Dean of the Graduate School, who is also an Associate Professor of Economics. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask the first question of all of you, and it's the question that I ask every business owner when I get them on the phone or in an interview. Don't do a lot of in-person interviews these days, and that's we'll start on the end with Julie. You know, how is business right now? How are things going?
You know, business is actually really strong for us right now, which I think we were a little surprised by, but we feel, you know, very fortunate to be tied to an industry that is just doing so well in a tough year. But we're actually on track to have our best year on record. And, you know, I think for those who aren't familiar with Boomtown, we're in the real estate space. And there have been just a lot of home sales. You know, a lot of people are stuck at home. They want bigger areas that they can, you know, have rooms for dedicated offices, and that's creating a lot of movement. And home sales are actually up 20%, and new home sales are up 30% across the nation. So we definitely feel tied to that industry. But I think also working in tech, we were able to make a quick pivot, and we're really, you know, proud of the team for the results that we've been able to get this year.
Shawn, what about Ernst & Young?
You know, in general, I know that so many people have been impacted. I know some businesses have had to close. Some businesses have reduced in size. But at EY, one thing that we've been able to do very well is pivot very quickly to find ways to continue to serve our clients in a virtual fashion. So for the most part, we are on track and on par with all of our benchmarks in serving our clients. And in addition to that, we also find ways to offer new solutions to our clients in areas regarding crisis command or workforce reimagined or economic development.
Education has been particularly challenged by this year. How are things going at CFC?
So our experience is, I would say, tricky is the word that I would use. So we are doing better than many places in the country, I would say. We have learned new skills. Faculty members have learned new skills. Staff members have learned new skills. Students are learning new skills. But let's face it, we're in a business in which closeness and collaboration and personal contact is paramount. We're in a business in which the hands-on experience is very important. and in which students come to have the sort of quintessential experience with their peers. And right now, we are trying to manage that and keep everybody safe. So, on the other hand, our enrollment is a little bit down from last year, but not terribly down from last year. And I would say in the graduate space, we're actually up over last year. So that's trending in a different direction. And so, we have managed to hold it together for this year. And I think if we can hold out until there's a vaccine, probably fall of 21 will be close to normal.
Okay, very good. Thank you. If you could go, and Shawn, I'll ask you this question, but I'd like for anybody to answer it. If you could go back in time to February and advise your company, your clients, your college about what was about to come, what would you tell them? What would you tell them to get ready for?
I would tell them, just from an advisory standpoint, to really prepare themselves to be challenged at the core. And what that means is, I would advise my clients to really look at the things that they've done well and continue to do well. And at the very same time, identify those things perhaps that don't identify with their goal, their mission, their purpose as a business. And either find ways to redefine those areas or find ways to reposition those areas. At the end of the day, knowing what's happening now, I would simply tell my clients just to be prepared for, you to justify yourself at the base level of who you are and what you do, what you stand for as a business.
Anyone else?
Sure, I can jump in. For our customers, I think I would have encouraged them just to stay the course. Real estate really did come to an abrupt halt in March and April. It was an industry that got completely shut down. Homeowners could not actually get to the closing table. And, many real estate agents, I think, feared that and pulled out, where others leaned in and stayed the course. And I think they are doing better now because of that. So, when times are tough, I think it is important to lean in and pivot and stay the course. So that's what I would encourage our customers. And then from a business perspective, from something tactical, I would probably just encourage people to have all of your employees work from home some of the time so that they're familiar with what it feels like to work from home. Being in tech, we're fortunate that we can do that easily with our work. And most of our seasoned employees had, but we had some new employees who had never worked from home before. So there's a little bit of an adjustment there and a learning curve. So I think if I could go back in time, I'd be having all of my team members work from home just to get familiar with it.
Sure, I'll take that too. So, interestingly, what I would tell them is what I've been telling them before, is to be prepared to be resilient. The pandemic is what caused us to move online, but we are a region that we have hurricanes on a fairly regular basis.
That's true.
And in one case, University of North Carolina Wilmington was offline for quite a long time because they had so much repair to do from hurricanes that they were out for several months. So the idea of being resilient and being prepared to move to a new mode of delivery of instruction goes beyond the pandemic. And so that's the advice I've been saying all along. And we had been preparing for it, but slowly. So what the pandemic did for us is push us from the old university pace of change to a very rapid pace of change. And pivoting to how do we continue education? How do we do continuity in this environment? So this is advice that I would have been given 2 or 3 or 4 years ago about getting ready for more online delivery of instruction.
So if we were to look for a positive from the pandemic, and there are so many negatives, those are easy, would it be that it's accelerated the pace of change within companies? That it's required them to do more quicker?
From our standpoint, I would say absolutely. I think that we, in higher ed, we like to say, this is the only way we can do something. We've done this way for the last 500 years, and we can't do it any differently.
Right.
And the pandemic has forced us to say, oh, yes, we can, and rethink how we do things. We have also been kind of slow, even as many companies have gone to working from home and telecommuting. Higher ed has been really, really slow at that. And this has forced us, I mean, you don't need your procurement department to be on campus every day. I mean, let's face it. So I think the accelerating the pace of change and accepting that there's a new normal in the manner in which people can work has definitely been a positive for higher ed.
Yeah, and I could say the same as well. It's been a positive in that we've understood that we're able to provide incredible service to our clients, even in a virtual environment. And at the very same time, we've seen our clients take this time to really reinvent themselves, right? To look at new ways of doing business, to strengthen those things that maybe needed to be tightened up, and really to set themselves up and to be prepared for a resurgence as we come through the pandemic. So all in all, there are certainly some good points and some development points that have come out of the pandemic for sure.
Julie.
Yeah, I would say I think open-mindedness has improved. I'll be the first to admit that I'm someone who loves the team being together in the office. I love the culture that, is formed by being able to be physically close. But I also love the silver linings that have come out from people being able to work from home. And when you see the productivity stay just as high or higher than when we're in the office, and then people's quality of life improves because they're able to spend more time with their kids, they're able to get outside and get more sunshine when they exercise, that's really important too. So I think the pandemic kind of forced the open-mindedness to improve in that area.
All right, very good. What should businesses do now? If there's a quintessential question for today, and in the scorecard report, I think it's this one, which is, what should businesses be doing right now to position themselves for an eventual economic reset? Like, how can we position ourselves to be ready? Not so we're catching up to Jacksonville and Salt Lake City and Raleigh, but so that we're better prepared than they are. Do you have any advice for that?
Well, so what I would say, being an educator, is that focus on the quality of your workforce, right? Focus on the quality of your workforce. There's a time in which people are working really, really hard, but you know the skills you want your workforce to have. There's a whole lot of online training that's available. There's a whole lot of courses on LinkedIn, on master courses. Many universities are offering online courses right now, or online programs, certificates. So this is a great time if you need your workforce to upskill or to develop new skills for the new economy that will emerge in 18 months to 24 months. This is a great time to be focusing on the development of that workforce. And so, and we are ready, higher ed, but all kinds of other providers are ready to help with that development right now.
And I would say it's really asking yourself the question, are we prepared? Do we have the capacity? Do we have the bandwidth, if you will, to adjust to and be prepared for the resurgence? So this is a great time from a transformation perspective for businesses to ask themselves, what are we learning about ourselves through this time? And based on what we're learning about ourselves, what is it that we need to change to serve our customers better, to be good stewards to our employees, and also finding ways to identify new lines of businesses, new services, new products that can be provided based on how you've optimized your business during this time. I think, sometimes, and what I've noticed in my life, when I look back at some of the more challenging times of my life, I look back and I realize that's when I learned the most about myself. And I think businesses can do the same as well.
Yeah. And I'll just add one more thing to that, to say, stop preparing to go back to what you used to do. Stop preparing to go back to normal, right? Or the old normal. But begin to think about what the new normal is going to be, right? In line with that, rather than looking back to, or we're going back to, 9 months ago.
Managers have had to become psychologists in many ways.
Absolutely.
I found
Yeah, I would say just to add to that, I think the tech industry is forever changed. I don't think we will go back to all being in the office, and I think the tech companies that are going to win in talent acquisition and retention will be the ones who stay flexible. So I think instead of thinking about what's it going to be like when we're all back in the office, continue to challenge yourself to get better and better at working virtually together, and how do you build that culture even while you're all in a virtual environment.
Definitely. So, talking about workforce and the talent pipeline, the report on page 2 points out that when we have a more inclusive economy and we have a stronger economy, and that allows us to be resilient and to deal with things like pandemics and possibly recessions or even hurricanes and earthquakes. Looking at your own organizations and at your own experiences, how are we doing as a community in bringing a more diverse workforce into the workforce? And, Jacki talked about the number of women that are leaving the workforce. And I heard in the New York Times today, 5.5 million women are out of work of the 10 million people that are out of work at this moment. And it's because of childcare, and it's because of what the report says, it's because of low wages. And women of color are disproportionately affected by that number. So how are we doing in the Charleston area?
So, she mentioned that 4 out of every 5 people who are out of the workforce are women. What doesn't get picked up in the fine details is of those women who are out, probably 35 to 40% are Hispanic women. There's a huge chunk of Hispanic women who are out of the workforce because a lot of Hispanic women are in low-skill areas. They're cleaning hotel rooms, they're working back of the kitchen, and the kinds of jobs that are now off the table because of the pandemic. So it's masking some fine details about who exactly is out of the workforce. I am encouraged to see the people of color in management professions. I remember when we were putting together the regional strategy, I put together a series of forums on diversity and inclusion, and that 11% number there, I remember that 11% number because we kept talking about it. So there are some encouraging signs. But let me just talk a little bit about long term. If you look at what is happening with the birth rate and look at what's happening, what the labor force is going to look like, diversifying your workforce, this is not about being a good citizen. This is about business. This is about your long-term survival, because the workforce of the future is going to be much more diverse than it is today. If you look in some parts of the country, and it's also happening here, the people who are under 30, there's a vast more diversity of people under 30 than people who are over 50. And therefore, making sure that diversity of people are educated, making sure that your environment is welcoming to this diversity of people, making sure that your workforce culture accommodates a wider range of people is going to be critical to your business survival. This is not about being a good guy or a good girl. This is really about long-term survivability of your business, because the labor force will be very different. And I'm talking about 10 to 15 years from now. So not a very long time away from now.
And I think we've seen some research that's shown in economic development that tells us the most successful, thriving cities are the most diverse cities. And what I've seen personally within our organization is we've decided to truly focus on our workforce to understand where are we sitting with regard to diverse talent. And we've got unique initiatives focused on making sure that we're diverse across the board, not only in the services that we provide to clients and the consultants we have working with those clients, but also as you go up the ladder, if you will, to ensure that diversity looks more like a cylinder than a triangle as you climb the ladder. So the amount of diversity at the lower levels is what we're pushing for at the highest levels as well, to ensure that we're represented properly when it comes to our clients, our culture, and our customers. Now, the other thing that I would add is asking yourself the question, and you made a good point about this being more of a business imperative than anything. So looking more at what success means, being successful means being diverse, because there's no way for you to understand different ideas, different approaches, different ways of doing business without having diversity amongst your teams. And that's certainly something that we strive for at EY.
I would just, I definitely echo their comments and would add that, I'm happy to see the improvement, but we can't stop now. And I think we need to be more intentional than ever, especially as businesses. I think we have a responsibility to be intentional about adding diversity. I think that starts in our recruiting process, making sure that our applicants are a diverse pool, and also taking a look at our current workforce as well. I think that's important.
So Shawn, how do you, what you said about being a cylinder instead of a pyramid is very interesting, because it feels like it's some top executive levels, and even among entrepreneurs, once you get, that's difficult to do that. How do you, I mean, what is the thing that keeps us from doing that, from realizing that?
Well, there are a couple things. I will start with some research that I did in my doctoral studies. And what some of that research taught me is that we look less and less diverse at higher levels, sometimes because of mentoring. And I know that within EY, we're very, very intentional about creating environments where internal networking, exposure to higher executives, mentoring occurs all the time. But in addition to that, I think it's really, really taking a hard look at, understanding and asking the tough question, why am I not as diverse at the top as opposed to at the lower levels? And in answering that question, it gives you an honest perspective of who you are as a business and gives you the opportunity to change. The thing that I know we can't do, as has been pointed out before, we cannot continue to do business as usual. It has to change. And I know that it is changing at EY and at a lot of organizations. Last point I'll make about this is, I think we talk about levels within the corporation, but I think about the youngest within our society. And it's teaching them what diversity looks like by living it out in front of them at the earliest ages possible. So finding ways to mentor children, to be in front of children, to show them what diverse leadership looks like at a very, very early age is very important to changing that dynamic as well.
Just to say, the only thing I would add to that is also to not automatically put any limits on anybody, right? We have to sort of abandon this idea that, we can spot the talent, right? Everybody can be developed through mentorship. Everybody can be developed through education. So as companies choose to use their professional development dollars, at least ensure that everybody in the company has access to the professional development and mentorship so that everybody has a chance to rise. We have a particularly dire situation in higher ed because I just looked at some data as to who is in graduate school right now. Who are the people doing PhDs? And our PhD pipeline looks as white as it has ever been. So we have diverse students coming to college, more and more diverse students coming to college, and they're asking us, where's my black professor? Where's my Hispanic professor? How come the professorate doesn't look like me? And we have to stop giving excuses because the people under 30, the one thing I like about them, they don't care about our excuses.
Right.
They're like, show me the action, show me the results, right? And so we have to get to that point.
All right, very good. So we got a question. How can businesses, and this is kind of along the lines of what we were talking about, how can businesses partner with K through 12 schools to build a diverse, skilled workforce for our future? And that's from Jennifer Albert. Thank you, Jennifer.
So I guess I'll start giving a stab at that. I would say that we have to start, again, with teachers not writing off any children. We know that we have issue with the teaching profession, and God knows, everybody knows I love teachers, but we do know that throughout the country, teachers are just a little bit threatened by black boys in particular. And as a result, we spend so much money in our country on having a police officer in the school. I know we give it a fancy name, we call it a resource officer,
Yes.
which is just such nonsense, right? It's just BS. We have a police officer in the school, and we focus so much on that rather than teaching and learning. And if we would get back to that, the fact that every child can learn, every child is ambitious, and focus on that from very, very early, I think that's how K through 12 helps us build a diverse pipeline. Right now, we have so many kids who just get frustrated, or they end up with a criminal record before they're even out of school, because of the manner in which our K through 12 is set up as really as a security organization more than an education organization, particularly for kids who are from black and brown backgrounds. And so we've got to start by dismantling that system entirely and say every child deserves an equal opportunity. You also have to go back and look at, there are some challenging household situations. And schools have to, our governments, our mayors, our schools have to figure out how we overcome those difficult household situations by using the schools as the mechanism to make sure that kids are fed, kids can do their homework, and kids are getting the right mentorship that they need, because that doesn't always come from all households. But we can solve that in the school system as well.
It probably comes as no surprise. I'm a big fan of getting tech in the hands of kids early on, especially girls. In those early education years, there's also a window of time where girls tend to lose interest. And if you can break through that and show them that they can be engineers, they can be coders, then that usually flows through to the college years. So
Why did they lose interest?
I think sometimes it's just the societal pressures of pulling them towards other things. So I think it's really important to show them women in tech and show them female engineers and show them female executives that they can do that. But I also echo it's really important just to get the technology in their hands and even make sure that they have internet access at home so that they, especially now with online learning, they have to have that strong internet connection to be able to do the schoolwork.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break because I think this may be the most important question that we've had. When we come back, Shawn, I'm going to put you on the spot. I want you to tell us about your experience at Cherokee when you were a young man living in Charleston and came back. But we're going to take a quick break, catch our breath, and this is a really great conversation, and we will be right back.
HLA just celebrated 34 years in business and is experienced in civil engineering, surveying, wetland permitting, landscape architecture, and permit coordination. These professional skills are used in a unique combination that produces high-quality services and resourceful solutions for site construction projects. For example, most undeveloped land in the Tri-County has wetlands, grand trees, drainage issues, or zoning deficiencies that make it hard to get in-site construction approvals or create a higher value development. HLA has a talented combination of experienced professionals that get the most out of your site design by integrating progressive land planning with wetland permitting and smart drainage solutions, producing superior results. Experience matters, and we have it because we are the site experts.
Hi, I'm Betsy Fanning, head of school at Trident Academy, a place where children who have language-based learning difficulties can come and get the education that they need. Kids who come here have either dyslexia or dyscalculia or dysgraphia. They have been in other educational environments where their needs have not been met. They come to us and we are able to help them thrive and actually transform lives. And that's what this event today is about, is transforming the Lowcountry economically to a better place. That's what we do with our children every day. We also have parents who come to our school from other places and bring their businesses with them so that their children can be at Trident Academy. So let's look at this event. Let's see what's going on and see if we can work together to bring the Charleston area to a better place economically.
All right, welcome back. Thanks again to our sponsors for helping us put this event on. And before we left, we had a question about how to get schools involved with businesses and businesses involved with schools. And I wanted to ask Shawn to kind of tell us about some of your experience.
Well, I'll start by saying the experience that I will tell you about is not much different from a lot of African American kids who grew up where I did in the Charleston community. So I grew up in Charleston Heights, in 5 Mile, Ben Tillman, George LeGree. I was raised by my grandparents. And I attended Shakora Elementary. And I keenly remember telling my first grade teacher, I didn't know how to articulate this. She asked, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to be a word processor. I was enamored by, the Smith Corona or the word processor. I looked through the service merchandise catalogs. I know I'm dating myself. And so I was fascinated by that. And it was a Smith Corona word processor, and that's what I wanted to be. I was trying to tell her that I wanted to be a technologist. And so, through the years, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th grade, 4th and 5th grade, I got a lot of mentorship, a lot of guidance, a lot of direction, first from my grandparents. I wasn't raised by my parents, I was raised by my grandparents. They call that old school. So this was hard knocks, get up early, work hard, stay out of trouble. The guide to success is good manners and work ethic. That's what I grew up on. And then moving away from Charleston into Berkeley County, where I went to middle and high school as well. Those values were pushed through to me also. And then going to the University of South Carolina, it was a strange experience for me because getting there, I actually did not understand what college was. I literally did not know. And I remember, putting the pieces together as I went through. Oh, okay, this is what this is. I have to leverage a lot of the skills that my English lit teacher taught me, Mrs. LeGree. She taught us how to study, how to work hard, how to apply ourselves. I applied those skills and, found my way through my bachelor's degree and then my master's and on to study for my doctorate. So at the end of the day, what I come away with is the very same thing I told you earlier. Mentorship is key. Many of the mentors who've invested in my life don't look like me. And I am proud and honored to be part of one of a very successful consultancy in Ernst & Young. And for me, I tell people this all the time. They say, well, what's it like working at EY? Well, I tell them it's like a college athlete going pro. I mean, this is the epitome of my career, and to be honored to be a part of this consultancy and trusted the way that I am to do the work that I get to do, all starting from Charleston Heights. And I can honestly say, when I look at myself and what others consider success, I look at everyone who's invested in me. It's, in a large part, it's their success through me. Yes, I've had to apply myself, but had I not had the opportunities, had I not been given a different vision and seen things from a different perspective, I would never be where I am today.
Okay, I'm going to have trouble following that up. Thank you for that. To shift a little gear, so some of the demographic data that we saw, and I think it goes along with some of what Julie said too about the housing market, shows that we're going to get an influx of people. Like, we get a lot of people here every day, but we're about to get a new influx. And I think, once the vaccine becomes available, I think people are going to feel more comfortable moving. But even now, at the high-end housing market, the Kiowa Island and Sullivan's Island, we're seeing a lot of movement in that area. What advantage does that give us in going forward past this as people leave some of the higher density metro areas and come to places where they might actually want to live?
So, I'll start with purchasing power, right? So, you're the people who have been buying homes. I looked at this recently, and We're talking about the average income among new home buyers is about $93,000, right? So it's about it's people making about $100,000 a year who are in the housing market right now and who have been driving the boom. And to the extent that they move to your region, you're talking about a lot of new purchasing power coming to the region, which means that those hospitality jobs that we estimated about 4,100 is probably a low estimate, because there's going to be more restaurants, more of that sort of stuff going on. It also means a better tax base going forward, which hopefully, it doesn't, a tax base doesn't necessarily translate into good schools in South Carolina because of our weird law.
Yes.
But if we didn't have that weird law, that would really translate into really improvement in schools, because the tax base would improve to support our school system. But what I will say is that those folks are going to also demand better schools. They're going to demand better services. We're talking about, as I said, $100,000 or more household income. They're going to be much more demanding in the community providing good services. So we have to also prepare for that impact on quality of life. I know sometimes we fuss here in Charleston about the region growing and the density and
Yes,
more traffic, and we fuss about that. Well, prepare for that on a little bit of steroids. So just be relaxed and be prepared to accommodate some new people, because to me, that growth is a sign of progress. That growth is a sign of new blood coming into the region and a chance to rethink how we do things and do things a little bit differently, which is not a bad thing.
And we're all way more comfortable with remote working now, so we can time our traffic.
Exactly.
Do you think I think you're talking about Act 238 when you're talking about the
Right.
tax structure that doesn't tax homeowners for schools as much as it taxes businesses.
Right.
Do you think that people moving to the area would be willing to pay more in taxes? I mean, part of the reason this area is attractive is because of that, I would say, especially for retirees. Do you think?
I think so. I think the people who are moving here are coming from places where they're paying more taxes, and their taxes are tied to the quality of their schools. And I think once they get here and realize the quality of the schools that are available broadly in the region, they will step back and say, but wait a minute, why is this so? And what are they willing to trade off, right? I mean, most people are not willing to trade off the quality of their kids' education. And if that means paying a little bit more, that's the very reason that housing prices are higher in the places that have good quality schools, is that people are willing to pay more, the premium, to access that good school. So most people are not willing to trade their kids' education for a couple of dollars.
Right.
So they will pay more taxes. And if I think most people are probably not even aware of how the law is structured.
Oh, I'm sure they do. They are.
And are flabbergasted when you explain that there's a relationship between this law and the quality of schools that
I've had that conversation many times with my family.
Precisely.
Yes. Julie, I don't know, you probably want to get in on the home.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what he said. I think Charleston is prime, to attract relocation people. I think that, our quality of life here is so great. And for many people leaving larger cities, Charleston in general is more affordable for them. So even though there may be some things like higher taxes, I think in general, the quality of life and the affordability is better than a city like New York. So I think we should be ready, and we should be ready for the construction that you talked about and the traffic. But I also think that we need to take a hard look at, protecting who is here. And I think we need to take a strong look at affordable housing. When we look at the scorecard, that's the one area that we've not improved in over the years. The average price of home keeps going up. So can we take some actions to make sure that we are offering affordable housing and pairing that with transit so that we can connect more people to jobs?
And I really wish we could have an index, maybe the economists can help us with that, to determine what affordable housing means mathematically, instead of someone on a city council deciding what it is a bit arbitrarily at times. So we only really have time for one more question. I want to ask this question for all of you. That's why I want to give a few minutes to it. So many times when we have the scorecard event, I will get responses from businesses, and they'll say, Andy, that was great information, but I still don't understand what role I can play. What can I do to move the needle? Like, I get it. I get the data. I see the need. But what can I do? each of you tell me, what would you say to that business owner?
So I would say pick one thing that you see in the scorecard, right? The scorecard, I've worked on the scorecard many years. I've always been part of the technical team that work on the scorecard. We look at a lot of stuff. And then we have to boil down a lot of stuff to producing, just enough for that community to digest. And I would say to that business owner, pick one thing, maybe two. We all know that in any given period, or in a given year, you can't accomplish 5 things, right? You have to pick the one thing and focus on it. So if for that business, it is about the diversity of their workforce, just pick that one and focus on that one, and say, can we build a strategy around diversity of our workforce? Or whatever it is. Or do we want to understand affordable housing? 64% of people are spending, more than 30% of their income on rental housing. If it's about affordable housing, why not invite in a couple of the experts, invite in the people who have been working on this and say, help me understand this one problem in our community and let's work on this problem together. But just focus on one single item and then spend the year trying to improve in your area of business or your relationship with the community on that one particular item.
Julie?
Yeah, I love that. I think committing to doing something is the first step. And I think as a business, you likely have an executive team, making sure that the executive team is united around what that one thing is, so that it can cascade down to the whole company. Because some of the best ideas come from the trenches. So if the whole company knows that you're rallied to that, and that you're bettering the economy and the local area, not just the business, I think that will just improve things for your business as well.
Definitely. Shawn?
And I think they've both made excellent points. It's really picking the one thing and then making sure you're getting the best ideas from every level of your organization. The only thing I would add is finding your passion. I tend to do better, and a lot of research has shown that you do better in affecting change with things that you're very, very passionate about. And so I live that example. I am, keenly involved in very different areas in the neighborhood that I grew up in. So helping, Metanoia find a way to extend what it does, because that's where I grew up. And also assisting Cristo Rey as they look at extending or establishing a school here in the next few years for kids who are just like me. I am always most effective when I find myself helping what I call little Shawn. When I'm looking at little Shawn and I'm able to say to him, I'm not the most successful, but this is what a form of success can look like for you. Here's how I did it. Let me bring you along.
All right. Very good. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, all three of you. This has been an incredibly strong discussion. I think we could go a few more hours, but we're not going to do that. Thank you very much, and please join us next time as we look forward to other events, hopefully not online, hopefully in person as we move forward through this. But thank you.